are going to vibe this evening. This is the Pathway to Peace Masterclass, a healing journey. And, I'm just here, first of all, just to serve and celebrate you first for just showing up in the room, for showing up in the space, for showing up for yourself and for whatever it is that you're looking for, you're needing, and you're interested in creating in your life. Hey, Candace, welcome. Thanks for being here. Drop it in the chat. Let us know where you're tuning in from. And so how I come to how I teach, how I share is I am really that person who says, okay, how do I look at myself first and figure out what my part is in the situation, and then how do I move forward from there? Because I think it's really important that when we're in chaotic situations or disempowering situations, that we begin to look at ways that we can take our power back. And so it's not a power struggle, it's about a power choice. So does that make sense for anybody? Does anybody really feel like, you know what, it's time for me to take my power back. It's time for me to take my voice back. It's time for me to speak up. If that's you, put a 1 in the chat. Welcome. I got a lot more people coming in. So happy to have you here. Dolores, Maria, thanks. If you haven't already, drop where you are tuning in from. I'd love to know where you're here from. So just put that in the chat. Let me know where you're at. From the chat, Ohio. I had family in Ohio. Yes. So we want our voice back. We want to take our voice back. We want to take our power back. So yeah, absolutely. And so as we're looking at this pathway to peace, this week I want to I want to dig in a little deeper. We kind of did a helicopter view. Hey, Nick, welcome. Hey, Laurie, welcome. We kind of did a helicopter view last week. And so over the coming weeks, I want to kind of focus in and zero in, dial in on ways that we can take our power back, ways that we can use our voice and put our message out there. And so one of the things that I love to do, especially when I'm on stage, and yet I found it works across all platforms. I grew up in the African American church. And so when something resonated with us, or even if we felt like somebody stepped on our toes, one of the things that we would say was, well, so if anything resonates with you while I'm talking, I got a couple of witnesses in here. Yep. So if anything resonates with you while I'm talking, just drop a well in the chat. Just so I know that I'm speaking your language, or I'm coming down your row or your pew or down your street, however you want to look at it. So I really, I'm here to serve and I'm here to celebrate. And then, we're going to do some Q&A at the end. So if you have a question right now, you feel free to drop it in the chat. I'll keep checking back to make sure that I'm getting to your questions. And then we also will have some time for Q&A that you can raise your hand, and if I can serve you and support you and help you, I definitely want to do that. So so for everybody who's coming in, I am Roz Clark, the Dream Doula. So I'm super excited to be here to serve you. And just as you're coming in, just drop in the chat where you are listening in from. Would love to know that. Michigan, cool. Massachusetts, yep. Cool. So like I said, we're talking about the pathways to peace. And I think that, I believe, and in many cases, I know that the pathway to peace is almost an ongoing journey. Like we get on the path and we're moving in that, and we get closer, and then it's like, whoop, left turn, and something comes up and we're like, wait a minute, that was not cute. And now I need to know what I do with that. So one of the things, like I said, I really believe in taking ownership of your situation. And even though there are times that it feels like things are happening to us. And yet what I believe is that things are always happening for us. And so there's always something to learn from it. So while everything may not be perfect, things are always perfecting us. We're always being perfected in the process. And so if we can lean into that and even release and ride with that sometimes, that it will make the chaos, sometimes it's not less chaotic, but at least we find that peace, because I don't believe that peace is a place. I think that peace emanates from us. So we find a way to make peace within ourselves, and then we can begin to make better decisions about what the situations that we are experiencing are. So, one of the things that I shared last week, and I really feel strongly about this, is that we don't attract what we want, we attract what we are. And so many times we're like, well, I just want peace. I just want some peace, and yet what's happening is we don't realize it, but we are in some kind of way creating or fueling the situation that we're in. Or if you find that you keep having the same relationships over and over again, and they just come with a different pair of shoes, then we need to always go and start looking at, what are we doing? How are we showing up? What does that mean that we need? Hey, LA, LA in the house. Yeah, what does that mean for us? How can we begin to say, okay, what is my part in this? So it's not about blaming. And that's one of the things. I don't blame myself. I don't blame the other person. I don't blame the situation. Like when things get 50 shades of crazy, the only thing that I'm trying to do is figure out, okay, one, what is this here to teach me? And two, how can I learn this as quickly as possible? So, I don't fight against the situation as much as I used to when I learn how to embrace, what is this here to teach me? I love how Tony Robbins always says, to get better outcomes, you have to ask better questions. So if you ask better questions, you get better outcomes. So rather than saying, why does this always happen to me? We begin to say, what is it that I need to learn from this? Or what is repeating in my life that I need to look at and become aware of, so that we can begin to move through the situation and continue to begin to learn what's going on. So one of the things that I'm really big out on is storytelling. How do we tell our story? And what I say all the time is, you want to learn how to stand on your story. You don't want to get stuck in your story. You want to learn how to stand on your story, because again, if I begin to tell a better story, and I can tell the same situation, and here's case in point. I left a toxic and dysfunctional marriage after 30 years. And so my story could have been, I was miserable for 30 years, or I wasted 30 years of my life, or that, whatever that is, that could be my story. And yet the story that I choose to tell is that while I stayed in a marriage probably 15 years past its expiration date, there were things that I was not able to focus on, communicate, or move into. And at the time I left was the perfect time for me. And so I don't judge myself. I don't beat myself up. I don't even beat the other person up. Like I said, now it was 50 shades of crazy, and many things felt unfair and all of that. And yet, if I stayed on that story of what they did, then I'm not focusing on, who do I need to become? Who do I need to become to have the next highest version of my life? How do I learn to live the best and highest version of my life and become who I need to be? So is there anybody in here who feels like they're ready to move to the next iteration of their life? Like there's a next for you. There's another place that you feel like you need to move to, or you want to move to. If that's the case, put a 2 in the chat. If anybody is in a space right now that they feel that it's time to move, they want to make some changes in their lives, they want to experience some changes in their life. Yeah, a lot of 2s in here, a lot of 2s in here. And I think that, when we come into a room, yes, yay, wow, a lot of 2s in here. All right, we're in the right place today. So yeah, when we begin to do this exploration, just the fact that, okay, Pathway to Peace resonated with you. And so it's like, okay, well, let me dip in here and see what I can find out. So first and foremost, I want to take this opportunity to celebrate you for being a seeker, for looking for new information, for looking for ways in which you can grow and you can evolve and you can become your own rescuer. So that when we look at, okay, I just want peace. And going back to, like I was sharing with my marriage, as it just got more and more chaotic and more toxic and more dysfunctional and all of that, and I was like, oh, I just need some peace. Like, Lord, just give me peace. And the funny thing that I had to do is the first thing. So, I'm speaking peace and I'm quoting peace. And, I get off the phone, even till this day, when I get off the phone, I say peace, because I want to speak peace into my life. And yet, while all of that was cute and all of that was lovely, the pathway to peace for me, first and foremost, was through forgiveness. And like, I don't know about you, I can find times when forgiveness doesn't feel fair. Like, it's like, wait a minute, forgive. I'm like, like, but, you don't even have language to put around it. Like, do I have to forgive? Like, I didn't do it. And yet, there is a way in which forgiveness is the first step. And so while it's not always a comfortable one, and even that, like, it's so interesting because even when you don't want to forgive or you don't know how to forgive or you can't even imagine forgiving, one of the first things that we do is we make peace with forgiveness. Like, just think about that. We make peace with forgiveness. Like, this doesn't make sense to me. This doesn't feel fair to me. And yet, I want peace so much. I need peace in my life to the degree that I am willing to do what it takes to get there. And so in that process, and I want to be very, very clear, and I'm sure many of you have heard this before, and if you haven't, if you're just hearing this for the first time, when you forgive, that does not mean that you have to reconcile. It does not mean that you have to continue to engage with that individual. It doesn't even mean that you have to tell them that you forgive them. You know, the forgiveness is the gift that you give to yourself. So that is something that we have to work on over a period of time. And like I said, even making peace with it. And so when it doesn't even feel like it's the truth, like you're just like, okay, I forgive them. And yet you really don't yet, you know? And yet that first step is, I am committed to forgiving them. I am committed to becoming the person that I need to become so that I have to forgive. Um, wow. Okay. I'm going to come back to that. Thank you, Nat. I love that. I have to forgive first. You know what I mean? And so finding this way of making peace with the forgiveness. And actually, I am going to go ahead. Nat said, I have no problem with forgiving him. I would just like my ex to forgive me, even though I didn't do anything wrong. And that's a really interesting thing because, again, it comes back to stories, and I don't know the circumstance. And so, what I will say though is the stories that people tell themselves and tell other people, because in my journey, I gave fair warning, plenty of warning. Like, I didn't like wake up one day and say, wow, I think I'm going to blow up my life, kept giving warnings and all of that. And then I was just like, okay, this is the countdown, like even that, and did everything that I could to leave clean and with integrity. And yet the shock of it the disappointment of it, all of that, there were times, still, I was cast as the villain. I was cast as the villain, and how could you do this, and EIEIO, and what I had to make peace with was, I know that this is the best and highest version of who I'm meant to be. I know that this is healthier for me, because one of the things for me, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease. And what I say all the time is, if it doesn't come out of your mouth, it will show up in your body. And so while I was the yoga girl and the meditation person and the prayer person, and I was doing all the practices and, like, I don't do stress and blah, blah, blah. My body grabbed hold of me and said, yes, we do. You're doing stress. You may not be acknowledging it. And so in that process, even that, I had to release what their story was, what their version of it was. Because sometimes we can't, not sometimes, we can't change anybody. Like, we cannot change anybody's opinion, change their mind, change who they are. And so even in that, sometimes we just have to release them, like, okay, I know that you're attached to this story. And so I just got to let you stay, stay attached to it. Right. And yeah, and especially when you're dealing with narcissism and those things, it is a lot. And and you're dealing with people who don't have the capacity to make logical conversation. So it's like, you can't make sense out of, and I'm gonna say it. You can't make sense out of crazy. And I'm not being flippant and dismissive, and yet sometimes that's just what it is. And so again, I'm not going to extend my energy to change somebody else's mind. And so, like they always say, where focus goes, energy flows. And one of the things that I think that we have to be extremely protective of is our energy and our peace. And so when we are on this journey of our pathway to peace, finding a way that, again, our peace is not predicated on any external situation, conversation, opinion, any of that. Our peace comes from within ourselves. So we don't find peace, we generate peace. And so when we begin to do that centering work, when we begin to get clear on what that is, and even down to the point that after a while, two things happen. One is the story begins to change. And the reason the story changes is because our energy that's attached to it is changing. Because, like, when you're in it, or you're just first coming through it, and it's not only divorce, it can be anything. It can be, a broken relationship. It can be a job. It can be a social setting. It can be anything that has caused chaos, hurt, and harm in your life. And so while you're in processing those emotions, processing the pain, processing the disappointment, processing the betrayal, processing the anger, whatever that might be, those things keep, we begin to, like, when we first start telling the story, it's attached to that energy because we're processing that energy. And then the more work that we begin to do in the releasing process, in the healing process, in the awareness process, the energy, that kind of energy begins to dissipate, and then we can be present with it in a different way. So, like, think back, like, I'd like everybody think back to a time that that something happened in your life that you were so upset about, just so upset about. And, like, and yet now, even in thinking about it, you're like, wow, I haven't thought about that in years. Or wow, I don't even, like, when I think about it, I don't even feel that way. Does that does that resonate with anybody? If that statement resonates with you, put a 3 in the chat. Does that resonate with anybody, that there have been things that have happened in the past that they just don't have the energy and the connection and the power anymore? Yeah, yeah. And so we know that we're capable of it, and the better we get at using the correct tools and tactics, we can get to it more quickly. We can get to it more efficiently. We can get to it more effectively. And one of the things that I'm always mindful of is, because we live in this instant gratification time and space, I want us to be careful about, when I say moving through it more quickly, I don't mean to ignore what's happening. I don't mean to, not acknowledge what you're feeling. I'm just talking about a practice that allows you to feel better sooner. So that if on this day you are angry, it's not like, oh my God, I can't be angry. I need to vibrate at a higher level. And I'm with all of that. And yet the truth of the matter is, sometimes you are just angry. Like, you're like, I'm not for it. I'm not having it. Whatever that is. And so rather than me pretend, like I'm saying, I used to, like, oh, I'm going to breathe and levitate and blah, 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 I had to sit with, now I can sit with, that really annoyed me, or that really made me angry. Okay, where's this anger coming from? And sometimes my anger is like, girl, I'm not trying to talk to you like that right now. I just need you to see me, hear me, and feel me. And so if that is the case, then I just sit with it. I sit with the anger. And so I would encourage you, as you're dealing with whatever you're looking for peace from in this particular time and space, to be open to sitting with the uncomfortable and not judging it. Not judging, like, oh, I shouldn't think that way, or oh, I shouldn't feel that way. Feel that way for a minute. Feel what it feels like. You know what I mean? And then do the exploration, but just sit with the feeling and be honest with it. And let it be honest with you, so that you're not judging yourself, that you're using your tools, and you're listening, because our emotions are here to serve us. We've learned to judge our emotions. And don't get me wrong, I don't think you should walk around angry all of the time, because, like, again, that's just too much energy. And yet, I don't believe that we're never supposed to be angry. And I mean, and I am definitely that person who believes in, how I feel energetically, and what I put out into the world is going to come back to me, and all of that. And yet, for me, this is my practice. I am also a truth teller. And so I have to tell myself the truth. So I can't tell myself I'm not angry when I'm angry. I have to say, I am really angry right now. Now I'm going to get over it. And yet in this moment, I'm angry. And so just really being present with that. And what I think the other thing is that I really want to dip in and deal with a little bit is what those emotions, what they serve, and how they serve us. And so what I'm going to do just real quickly, though, is just make sure that I've touched. Yeah, we touched the forgiving. Yeah, they're coming from a place of hurt, and that's on them. You don't know about forgiveness, but it's an understanding, acknowledgement that it wasn't my doing. So I let go of the anger. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's a really cool and healthy way to look at it. And yeah, like I said, with those that are on the narcissistic spectrum, that's just a whole nother animal. And more than anything, as much as you can set healthy boundaries, I mean, if you can go totally no contact, I think that's the best way. And if not, if you can't go no contact, if you can just go gray, like, that you don't respond or you don't buy into that, because then, you you continue to perpetuate it. So don't let them pull you in to become their supply once again. So if you can just go gray and it's like, okay, we just need to talk about this. Okay, nope, I'm not going over there. I'm not going down that rabbit hole. So took 6 months, but I finally forgave. Now 11 months. Good for you. And you're feeling pretty good. Yay, I'm happy for you. That is awesome. Yes, anger went out the window when forgiveness entered. I love that. I love that. And it's what I think is really interesting, and this is kind of the next point that I want to go to is like when we talk about getting stuck in our story, that we can become the victim, in so many different ways. And that does not mean that if you were wronged or, something happened that was not fair or right, that is not saying, oh, you're just being a victim. That there's a way that you can frame that, acknowledge that, and yet not be victimized by it. And also what we learn, and somebody just said it was celiac. So yeah, whatever we internalize is going to show up in our body. And like autoimmune diseases are typically the body turning on itself. And so if we're stuffing down whatever we're feeling, then that stuffing down those feelings have to attack something else. And typically it's our own body. And so that's why I always say if it doesn't come out of your mouth, it's going to show up in your body. So again, that moment of acknowledging. And I think that when we look at owning our story, owning our experience, and taking our voice, taking our power back and then using our voice again. And again, not like you don't need to use your voice with a narcissist because they're not going to hear you. So like you'd be better off doing mirror work or whatever that is, role playing, whatever all of that is. And yet there are ways and times that we need to look at, okay, like I said, what is this here to teach me? Or how do I learn or grow from this? And so sometimes the emotion that comes forward, the emotion that comes to the fore is not really the real emotion. It's a lot easier to be angry than it is to be hurt. It's a lot easier to be belligerent than it is to feel belittled. And so sometimes we need to look at, am I really angry or am I sad? Am I really angry or am I afraid? Because there's certain emotions that don't feel comfortable for us to voice or for us to acknowledge. Because, like I said, if it's anger and bravado, you feel like you're operating from a place of power. And yet, if you get in touch with the sad, if you get in touch with the afraid, if you get in touch with the disappointed even, that's a different kind of way that we have to navigate. There's another layer and degree of vulnerability when we start tapping into and touching those types of emotions. And so is there anybody in here who knows in the past that even though anger came to the fore, there was another thing that was, there was another emotion that was deeper and behind that? If that's you, just put a yes in the chat. And anger does serve. I totally agree. Yeah, and it's a lot easier to be angry than hurt. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Fear, yes, especially fear. Exactly. And a lot of that comes from our upbringing, and there's so many different things. Like, I was the eldest. It was just two of us, but I was the eldest, and so I was always, you have to look out for your little brother. So, and the role that I ended up playing first in my family, then in my friendships, and finally in my marriage was I was always the protector. I was always the rescuer. and I identified with it. And this goes back to, and my needs were met growing up that way, because when I showed up as the protector, you're such a good big sister. You're so strong. You get this reinforcement from things that over time or taken out of balance don't serve you. So there's nothing wrong with being strong by any means. And yet, if you only know how to show up in your bigness and in your strength, and you don't have any relationship with your fear or your sadness, because there was not room for that to be expressed, or it was not it not only was there not room, you were almost punished or ridiculed for it. There's an imbalance in how we're how we've progressed. There's an imbalance in our evolution. There's an imbalance in the way that we show up in the world. And so we have to, do the work to check ourselves, you know, fix the home health nurse is here to change my wound. Yes, yes. Thank you. Thank you. So yeah, there are times that we just have to say, okay, let me go to this scary place called sad. Let me go to this scary place called afraid. And here's the reverse of it. There are other people who get their needs met by being the sad one, by being the weak one. And I'm not using weak in a judgmental way. And yet those people learn playing small got their needs met. Being sad, being afraid, being hurt, being a victim, that got their needs met. And so what they really just needed was somebody to hug them and say, I love you. They had to create a situation so that need would get met, because there may have been people in their lives that did not know how to just say, I love you, or did not know how to just show up for them that way. And so again, when we begin to look at the choices that we make and why we make them, where did that come from? Really doing that deep dive work, really asking those questions, because like we started with, like, ask better questions, get better outcomes. So when we really start doing that work of the exploration of, well, where did this come from? Or how did I let that happen? You know what I'm saying? Or again, like, what need is being met for me right here? And allowing ourselves to have that other conversation, to show up in a way that may not be what we're used to, and certainly isn't what people expect of us, but beginning to make room for all of us, make room for the totality of who we are. So who in the space today could feels like you could begin to incorporate some other parts of yourself that you haven't allowed to come to the front yet? To just put a seven. Seven's my favorite number. So if there's room and space for you to begin to integrate all of the different parts of you, put a 7 in the chat. That there's definitely a way in which we can keep, showing up for ourselves, showing up and showing up more authentically, because I think that that's one of the really important things that we can do for ourselves. Because when we have goals, or we have ways in which we want to grow, evolve, express ourselves in a different way, then I think that the big question is, who do I need to become to get to where I want to be? So it's like, I am where I am, and what I want is over there. So who do I need to become to get from where I am to where I want to be. And so for me, I do a lot of coaching. You know, like I said, I'm known as the dream doula. And so I coach women of affluence and influence who are ready to transition. Like they feel trapped in the lives that they've created. So it may be somebody who has, you know, gone very far in the corporate world, and yet they feel like their creativity is stifled, and so they don't know. They know that there's more that they want to be. They know that there's more that they want to say. There's another way in which they want to show up in the world, but they perfected this persona that does not make room for that creative part of them. And so the work again begins to be about, okay, what else could you do? How else could you show up in the world? How could you reconnect with that dream that you've always had, that maybe in your mind it's too late, you missed the opportunity, you know, you didn't do what you were supposed to do. And so now it's like, I'm just gonna kind of tough it out where I am and keep moving that way. So does anybody in here have a dream, like a dream that they're still waiting or longing? Longing is a better, excuse me, a better word. A dream that you're longing to live. Working on the future you every day. I love that. I love that. So yeah, anybody, any dreamers in the room, put a D in there if you're a dreamer. Any dreamers in the room, some dreams that you're still working on? Got a Z. I'll take the Z. Yes. Yes, 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 yes. Our dreams. Yes. Dreams, dreams, dreams. And what I always say is that our dreams are the roadmap to our destiny. So if it's in you, I don't care how late it is or, you know, what it feels like. And, you know, people sometimes say, well, Roz, I wanted to be an Olympic skater, and that's not going to happen. And yet what I would say is get back on the ice. There is a part of you that comes to life when you operate in your gift, and it will show you what the next right thing is for you. And so, no, it may not be that you're going to be an Olympic skater, and yet there is something about you being on the ice that reconnects you with that special part of yourself. So, really, I want to encourage you to be open to that exploration, open to that that conversation. So, and I actually have a resource. I created a 21-day mindset reset downloadable workbook that I will drop a link in the chat that you can check out. That for 21 days, it's you know, questions and prompts and journaling space so that you can begin to revisit that part of you that is longing to be expressed, and looking for different ways to show up for yourself, to show up for that next great iteration of who you are. And just again, finding that pathway to peace, that way of, you know, getting your needs met in a way that is healthy for you, being able to show up fully and authentically as yourself. So as we look at this process of forgiveness, there are three levels of forgiveness that I want you to think about. And of course, the first one starts with you. Forgive yourself. Forgive yourself if there's something that you think that you need to forgive yourself for, whether it was, you know, you think you made the wrong choice. Like I said, I believe that all things work together for our good. And yet, you know, you're like, girl, you don't know the choices I made. So if there is something that, you know, just is like, you know, pulling at you, forgive yourself. Start with yourself. Forgive yourself. Love yourself. You know, take some time, do some mirror work and loving yourself, and just creating space for who you are and who you want to be. So, begin to do that. And then forgive the person who offended you. You don't have to tell them that you forgive them. You don't have to make some big pronouncement, anything like that. You do what you need to do in that process to forgive them and release them. What I always say is, I lovingly release you to the outcomes of your choices. So that way I'm not attached to it. I don't have to see it, because too many times we say that, and what we're really saying is karma is a bitch and it's coming for you. That energy doesn't serve us because we're still attached to the anger. But when we can just say it and say it until you mean it, I lovingly release you to the outcomes of your choices. You get to be whoever you want to be, but who you are is not healthy or safe for me. So then you're releasing that judgment. And then forgive life, whatever that looks like to you. And, and even some people have the audacity to forgive God. Like, God, I'm not sure what you were doing. I'm going to go ahead and say, okay, but like, it wasn't cute, whatever that is. And I don't mean this in a flippant way again. Sometimes you need to release that or say, I forgive life. I forgive God. I forgive the universe. I forgive the higher consciousness, whatever it is that you're saying, because again, that stops making you a puppet. That stops putting your fate outside of yourself. And then you can begin to make peace. So whatever your process is, that if you take this higher being that you love or trust, and yet you feel betrayed by, again, tell the truth. Like, I don't think this is fair. This is not what I wanted. I think you forgot about me. Whatever that is, tell that truth so that you can deal with it. Like, you're not going to get struck by lightning or whatever. Just tell that truth so that you can live a true and authentic life. So those are the three things, yes, we got a well. You put that on a shirt. Absolutely love that. Love, love, love. So look, if you have any questions, if anybody wants to raise their hand and ask a question, I'm happy to answer your question. If you don't feel like unmiking and you just want to put a question in the chat, I'm willing to, I will meet you wherever is comfortable for you. So if you have a question or I can serve you further or specifically, let me know. This thing, it's so crazy. There's after a certain time, it locks me out of the chat. What happened? That is so unfair. All right. So if anybody did anybody put anything in the chat? If you put something in the chat, just raise your hand. And what they told me is, like, I can dip out and dip back. So let me try that real fast. I'm not leaving you, I promise. I'm just going to see if that works. So let me try it. I'm going to go out and come back. Okay, I'm back. Yep, and it got me back in there. Yay! Yay. Okay, that worked. Cool. Can everybody hear me? Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. Yep, okay, got some hearts. Yep, hearts, hands, whatever. All right, cool. I saw a hand. Dolores, where'd you go? Go ahead and unmic and ask your question, please, or make your comment.
No, I was just raising my hand to let you know I heard you.
Oh, thank you, my dear. I appreciate it. I so appreciate it. Thank you so much. Yeah. Okay, so then you know what? Put in the chat for me what was your biggest aha moment, moment, or takeaway? What was your biggest what resonated most with you today? I'd love to know. And while you're typing, yeah, cool. Yep. And Danielle, which thing should I put on the shirt? The pathway to peace is forgiveness. Yeah.
What I think you should put on the shirt is I lovingly let you go and release you to your own choices. Because I've been saying it a little bit differently in my head. I'm like, good good luck with your consequences. I'm out. But that sounds
Right.
so much, yeah, that sounds so much better. And it really is a more healthier place. And that's where I'm trying to go too, is just, not having, you were talking about anger and feeling anger. I've been in situations where, I was angry and I would be like, well, you shouldn't be angry, or, I'll act a fool and make bad choices. And then I'm like, well, I should never feel that again. And it's a sense of shame, but it really does serve though, too, when you think about it. I mean, like, it's such a good signaler to let you know, like, something isn't right. Something's
Yep.
going on. I need to
Mm-hmm.
look at this for what it is, whether that's something with me or with the other person, and how you're saying, take a step back and be like, I don't know, like more realistic. Like, not everything is everybody else's fault, even though we don't deserve bad treatment, but we also play a role in that, like our self-worth, our self-esteem, our self-talk, our upbringing, all of that stuff. And to not acknowledge that is how and why I have fallen into the same pattern, because I didn't even look at the pattern. But I
Yeah.
am the common denominator in all of my relationships, good or bad. And that's the only thing, like you were saying, Roz, your whole speech was like, bing, 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 bing. So on point, because you cannot control anybody else except for yourself. And I love that.
Yes.
So thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing and just kind of, yeah, putting a cherry on it. So I really appreciate that. And like, we are in agreement. And I just don't know, for me, I don't know how we come to life and not tell the truth. And so, like, there, how can we never be angry? It's not always rainbows and unicorns. And when I tell you, I'm probably one of the now, and I wasn't always, one of the most chill part people. And yet, I think that it's because I can say when I'm feeling what I'm feeling, I can acknowledge it. And I think you really tapped into something and not judge it, not no shame around it, no guilt around it, no whatever, and then we can be present and let what we're feeling serve us, because it's always there to inform us. So yeah, I just really I love that. And thank you, Ren. I'm so glad that it resonated with you. And Elisa, the pathways to peace is forgiveness. Yeah, I'm telling you, forgiveness is so incredibly powerful. And one of the reasons that I started with that was because I know what a challenge it is. It's easier said than done. And yet when we get intentional about doing the work and choosing the language, like, what resonated with Danielle was, me saying that, I lovingly release you to the outcomes of your choices. Because in the way, and trust and believe, when I tell you, I was in my journal, like working that out and writing that out and whatever. And I finally, that was the language that I landed on that allowed me to be able to say that and have it feel right, and again, it was a process. So as we continue to grow and to evolve, um and like, if you're not journaling, I so encourage everybody on here to do some journaling, and just make sure that you are writing it out and thinking it out and working it out, so in a way that is true and authentic, in a way that is, letting you express yourself, the fullness of yourself, because that's when we're able to show up and serve. Like, if I came in here, and you would know it, like if I came in here like, okay, let's everybody just breathe right now. And don't get me wrong, I do retreats and all of that, and yet there comes a time that we just need somebody to be real with us, or somebody to hear us and make a space for us to be real. And so I think it's really important that we find people who can hold space for us, that we can tell. And I mean, obviously, we have to be very wise and not paranoid and yet careful, that we do find people who can hold space for us, be present with our truth, be present with that part that's not pretty. Because for me, though, I've got like a very, very small circle and a very, very tight tribe there who does that for me, because that was the imbalance in my life. Like, this way that I process and this ability to be there for people has always, I mean, I've been like this since I was a kid. And yet what I didn't do, and that was the imbalance, I didn't have a me for myself. I didn't have, because I was supposed to be the strong one. I was supposed to be the stoic one, and in the African American community, you didn't go to therapy or whatever, trust and believe I'm past that. Um, and yet, early on, so like, who do you tell that to? Who do you share that with? How do you even admit it to yourself? Like, how do I admit I'm afraid? Like, I don't even know what to do with that. And so those parts of ourselves that we don't know how to speak out loud, start by writing them, start by journaling them, really do the work. And one of the things too, I'll be here same time, same station every week. If you want to find me and follow me, across other social media platforms, I'm at Roz, ROZ, Roz Diva Nation, all one word. So I'll put that in the chat too. I'm going to drop the Mindset Reset um, link in one more time. And then if you want to find me, it's at Roz Diva Nation. Did I spell it right? No. Wait. There we go. So yeah, so you can find me anywhere, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, TikTok. But I'm on TikTok, so I'm not dancing. I could though if I wanted to. I could dance if I needed to on TikTok. So yeah, so you can definitely find me and follow me. And even that, like, even my platforms are like, this platform, obviously I'm here to be a part of a healing community, and I love that because it's a very big part of who I am. And yet you'll find, like, on other platforms, so like on LinkedIn, because I work with people who are in transition and helping people to build online businesses and brands, so I talk a lot about that. So I don't know how many people in your journey are like looking to that next iteration of yourself. It's any, and actually I'll just ask that question. Is anybody in here, like, in your dreaming, in your growing and doing, part of it is around either a business or a brand or financial freedom? Is there anybody in here who is visiting that part, that iteration? Just put a 5 in the chat. I'm just curious. So yeah, because I really do believe, and I think so many women, and if I have any guys in here, I love you. I want you to know that I do love you. All I'm saying is, a lot of times women, we're not always in a place that we are financially independent or able to really, put ourselves out there and do what needs to be done, to make sure that we're good in the future. So that's one of the things that I am really passionate about, is helping women to create online businesses and brands, because I think it's so important. So as we do the work, as we do the healing work, as we do the growing work, as we do the spiritual work, we also have to make sure that we're living a good life. We're living a life that we enjoy. We get to do what we need to do. We have the resources to, care for the people that we love. We have the resources to take care of ourselves. And so I think that's really important. So from this, as we look at this healing journey, this pathway to peace, and we're looking at forgiveness, I want you, like I said, I want you to start with yourself. And I really want you to be kind to yourself. I really want you to set aside time to do things that are special to you and for you. And be intentional about that. Like, put it on the calendar, make it a date to take care of yourself, make it a date to take yourself to your favorite restaurant, make it a date to, I don't know, go swimming, go golfing, go dancing, whatever it is, make it a date on your calendar to take good care of yourself. So, and just out of curiosity, if you could do anything for yourself right now, like money's no object, time's no object, job's no object, what would you do for yourself if you could do anything for yourself? Put it in the chat. I'm really looking forward to seeing these. Get a massage. Yes, that's one of my favorites. Spa getaway. Yep, yep, yep. Travel and live wherever I want to. Online business, Ren, that is the way. Digital nomad. I love that. I love that. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Anybody else? You can't think of what you would do for yourself? Come on, Alexis. Yes, I see you typing. Right on. Right on. So this is what I'm going to challenge each of you to do is within the next, actually tomorrow, we're not even going to wait. Make an appointment to do one thing for yourself, whatever that is, and do it within the next 10 days. Doing what I want without anyone's consent. I love that. Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. And so, begin to start making those choices. And it can be one little step at a time. You just make one choice. I love the saying, you just make the next right step. So you don't have to figure it all out at once, but just make that next right step. So whatever it takes to get away, and wherever you are, like whatever that looks like, starting tomorrow, starting tonight, make an appointment within the next 10 days to do something for yourself, whatever that looks like. And it can be, it could also be just going on a lovely walk, whatever that, or reconnecting with a friend that you haven't talked to in a long time. I tend to like solitary things for myself, that I just do something for myself, by myself. I think that's really important, to have me time. And yet there are times it's just like, oh, wait a minute, I haven't talked to my girlfriend in XYZ. And so I make sure that I pick up the phone and call. So we want to make sure that, we do that. So that's your assignment. Do something special for yourself. Know that I am holding you in my prayer and meditation time on the regular. I'm holding space for you. I'm celebrating you. I'm believing in you and your dreams. And, please come back next week. I love having you here. I hope that I've served you. I hope that everybody has gotten something from this. And so, open up the mic and at least say good night to each other. So thank you for being here. I appreciate you so much.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you so much, Roz. That was a beautiful gift. Good night, everybody.
Good night,
You are
and
so
thank you.
welcome. Good night. Be safe, everyone. Have a good night.